on our launch day, we had 710 people in attendance.
Guys, today I'm sitting down with Pastor Josh Koskinen with Story Hill Church. Josh, what's going on, man?
Hey, so glad to be here.
Man, you are the first official guest in our new podcast studio.
I'm honored to be here.
Man,
Very cool.
6 months ago, this was a guest bedroom, and now it is this.
It's way cooler than a guest bedroom.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Funny enough, when we're done recording this afternoon, I've got family coming in town this weekend, and so I've got to tear all this down and put a mattress on the floor here. So it is a multi-purpose room. But anyways, Pastor Josh, you guys are killing it. You launched you guys just launched in
January 28th, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're almost a year old.
Sweet. Yeah. So you're coming up on a year.
Yeah.
Let's just jump right in. I want to learn more about kind of your story. Like, what made you want to decide to plant a church? Like, when did you feel God calling you into that?
Oh, man. I would say somewhere like 2013, I started reading about church planting and just got kind of a call to be a part of a multiplying movement. And told my wife, like, hey, I think one day we'll plant a church. And she was like, absolutely not. We're not going to do that. And then fast forward to 2017, I was getting ready to actually go be a campus pastor at a large mega church in the Milwaukee land area. And they wanted me to go through some sort of campus pastor assessment beforehand. And they were like, nothing like that exists. So we're going to send you to a church planting boot camp. And so I went through a church planting boot camp, and it was in 2017 that my wife and I were like, we are going to plant a church someday.
Yeah.
And fast forward to 2023, that's when the door really opened for us to step into what is now Story Hill Church.
Yeah, that's so exciting. So what was your process like whenever you guys first decided, all right, we're going to plant a church? What was your first step whenever it came to building that initial team?
Yeah, so we stepped in and moved into the community that we're in right now in Wisconsin in the summer of 2023 for a 2024 January launch. So it actually was only like a 6-month runway, but I had some connections in the community. I grew up close to there, and we felt like, hey, we can get this done in 6 months. So our process coming in was, how many people can we meet and how quick can we meet them?
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we did was we reached out to Church Candy and went through the process of how do we make this vision that we have that only exists in our heads. Like, we were pastors of a church that only existed in our imagination.
Right.
And how do we make that a reality? And so we reached out to Church Candy and kind of went through some of that process.
Great, man. Great. And so how did the process of doing like interest parties and things like that go for you guys?
Yeah, well, we actually started with doing coffee ads. So we launched these ads on social media that said, new church coming to town, grab coffee with the pastor. And in the span of a few weeks, we had 78 bookings for coffee with the pastor.
Whoa.
And so literally I would sit in the same coffee shop and somebody would come in, we would have a conversation for 45 minutes to an hour, and then the next person would come in. And at one point, one of the baristas was like, are you interviewing for like a job or something like that? Like, what's going on? And I was like, actually, I think people are interviewing me, not me interviewing them. But yeah, we had 78 coffee bookings in a probably a 1-month window. And at the end of each coffee booking, I would invite them to our first startup party, is what we called them. So a startup party is a gathering of people coming together to learn about this new church coming to town.
Sweet, man. So you were, at the time, you weren't like bivocational, you were just like full-time in the church plant?
Full-time in the church plant, yep. And luckily through, some church partners, generous people who kind of invested in us early, I was able to be full-time right out of the gate.
That's huge. That's huge. So you're sitting at coffee with people, and I know the answer, but I want you to talk a little bit more about it. How were you able to get 78 bookings for people that were interested in your church plant as far as like one-on-one coffee meetings?
Yeah, well, we launched ads on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and in the ad, they would be able to book and see my calendar, book a time, and then we would follow up with them through like church funnels, a texting platform with, "Hey, looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. See you in an hour for a cup of coffee."
Yeah, I had
And
reminders.
yeah, reminders, and they would come in, and we just would have information about our church, the opportunity to hear their story. And in these coffee ads, we actually would run like several different ones that Church Candy had suggested. And there were some static ones with some pictures, and then there were some videos. And for whatever reason, the ones that had my wife in them were a lot more successful. So she would join us, and we'd film a video together, and people would book a cup of coffee right in there. And we just were able to meet so many cool people who were interested in being a part of a new church. Many who had never been a part of a church before. They were like, I've always wanted to be a part of a church. And I just thought, well, I'll be a part of one from the beginning. And we're like, great, sounds good. And
That's
so,
huge, man.
yeah, it was awesome.
That's huge. A lot of pushback I get from people whenever it comes to church planting, and then like even our business, like what we do, running ads, inviting people to church. They'll say, "Oh, you're just taking from other congregations. Like you're just getting church hoppers. People are leaving one church to go to the new girl in town, the new shiny object, the new
Sure.
church plant." Whenever you were meeting with people and connecting with people, what were the backgrounds like? How many of them were currently at another church? How many of them never gone to church before? Like, what was the vibe you were getting from these people?
Yeah, I would say of those coffee meetings, probably the majority weren't a part of a church before. Like they were just interested. And for whatever reason, sitting down for a cup of coffee with a pastor was like a little bit more disarming than walking into a church building or even a startup party. So they were like, hey, I want to learn a little bit more about this, and I'll get to learn about it in my favorite coffee shop. And yeah, I mean, some of our most key people now who are a part of the life of our church, I met over a cup of coffee, and actually have had the opportunity to baptize many of those people. And one of those is a story. Her name's Colleen. And I met her for a cup of coffee. She had never been a part of a church before and was a part of our first like baptism Sunday after we launched. And as I was like praying for her and getting ready to baptize her, I just was like, we started this church for the Colleens. And it started over a cup of coffee through an ad on social media.
That's crazy, man. So the process is, we created an ad that would say like, "Hey, we're planting a new church. Would love to connect. Click below to schedule time to grab coffee." People would schedule, and then you would just kind of set up shop at a coffee shop, and people would just come in and get connected with you. What was this like? I don't want to use like business terms and stuff, but like, what was the conversion rate from these coffee meetings to getting them bought in? Like, did you guys have, even if you don't have hard numbers, like, did you have a good amount of
Yeah.
people that got bought in from those coffee meetings?
Yeah. I would say the more interaction that I had with them outside of the texting workflow, the automatic text that would come out, the higher the success rate in them coming for a cup of coffee and then eventually coming to a startup party. And I would say at least 75% of the coffee meetings that I had joined us for a startup party later on.
That's huge.
And so we really focused for the first month and a half or so on these coffee meetings. But then after that, we transitioned to startup parties, which are interest meetings for people to come and learn about the church. But many of the people that I had coffee with in that first month and a half joined us for our first startup party, which getting that like critical mass, that base was so huge for the success of our parties.
I love that, man. I love that. So you said there, like, the more interaction you had outside of just the auto texts, can you talk a little bit more about what you were doing to connect with people?
Yeah, I would follow up with them after the cup of coffee, and I would make sure to say something that was personal to the conversation
Yeah.
that we had. Like, hey, I really enjoyed hearing about your job and what you do. I really enjoyed hearing about your passion for being a part of a new church. Something that they commented on in our meeting was something that I followed up with. And then that would spark a conversation for the future invite to one of our startup parties.
Yeah. Do you remember how much you guys were spending on ads to inviting people to grab coffee?
Our coffee ads, we spent about $1,000 to $1,500 a month
Yeah.
on.
So that, and then that equated to what did you say, 78 people?
78 people. Yep. So I would say overall for the 2 months that we did our coffee ads, we probably spent $2,000, 78 people, and with a 75% at least success rate and them coming to one of our startup
Dude,
parties.
that's huge. That's huge. So, I want to talk a little bit more about startup parties. But before we jump into that, I want to tell you about a book that I wrote last year called Launch Big. It's all about how to use digital marketing for new church plants, on how to build your launch team, launch big, and then once you launch, get new guests every single Sunday after that launch Sunday. We have a whole chapter in here all about the Coffee with a Pastor campaign that we ran for Pastor Josh. Shows you how to run that play. You can go get it. It's available on Amazon. You just look up Launch Big Book on Amazon. We'll link it down below as well. Or if you're a church planter or a pastor and you want new guests coming into your church every single Sunday, you can go to churchcandy.com, schedule a call with the Church Candy team. We would love to chat and see if we would be a good fit to work together and help you use social media to get new guests walking through the doors of your church. Now back to the podcast. I get asked all the time, what's the best process for doing startup parties? Where should they be at? Whenever we planted our church, we did different ones. One of them that was at the school we did, and it was an ice cream social. We had ice cream. Another one was at my son's gonna have a birthday party there this year. It's like a bounce house place. And we just rented the same thing you would do to rent a birthday party room.
Yep.
We just did that process. So the kids would go and do the bounce houses, and then the parents gathered for the vision pitch and stuff. So what did you guys do for your startup parties?
Well, all of our startup parties were actually what would be then our future property or location for the church. So a couple things that we did was always good food. So in our invitation, we're like, you're going to come, you're going to get a great meal, you're going to get a free T-shirt, and you're going to hear more about the story of Story Hill Church. So, I mean, our first one, we had barbecue. We ran ads for maybe about a month leading up to our first startup party, and we actually had 170 people at our first startup party, which was awesome. And of those 170, we had 80 people on that day commit to be a part of the launch team.
I love that.
And so right out of the gate, we had momentum. And we had barbecue on our first startup party. And we did have some activities for the kids that would come. But we really it was all in family focus. We are excited. I'm a father of 4 boys, and so we're a big basketball family. We love the Milwaukee Bucks and go to a lot of games for them. But one of the things that my wife said at our first startup party was, "Hey, some of you today who are gonna commit to be a part of our launch team, we're excited to raise our kids together with you."
Yeah.
And we're opening up the door of our heart and our home to say, we want to do life with people, and 80 people committed to be a part of it on our first party.
Dude, I love that. I love that. Tell me more about your location or your building. Sounds like you guys might not have been load in, load out at a high school like a lot of people might.
Yeah,
do.
I'm about to make every church planter jealous in what I'm about to say here, but we actually have an old church building of a church that closed and gave it to us. So it's about $1.5 million property that has a parsonage, a house on it. And the story behind that is in 2009, right out of college for me, I was looking around at jobs, and there was this church, small church in McGuanago, Wisconsin, that was hiring a youth pastor. And it's basically didn't pay, but you got to live in the house on church property. And the property that we're on today is the church that I first started ministry in. So I've been a youth pastor on this property before, and I had moved away. I had worked in other large multi-site churches for about 10 years. But when that church closed, I got a phone call saying, "Hey, we don't want to see this become a subdivision. We still want it to be a church. And we believe that this building can have gospel impact in the community. So do you want it?" And so I got a building and we got a parsonage, and I've lived there before, and now I live there again. And we didn't get any people, but we had the building out of the gate.
Yeah, man, that is huge. That's huge. So, moral of the story: don't burn bridges whenever you leave ministry.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's been really full circle. Just this is where we started our ministry, and now this is where we're going to be for quite a while. And our kids are going to graduate high school from the high school that's right across the street from the church. And it's just been so cool to see how God has taken some of those full circle relationships and brought people into a relationship with Him, and they never had a relationship with Him before.
I love that, man. I love that. I love seeing the fruit of different church planters that we're working with like that. Uh, so throughout the launch process, these coffee meetings, startup parties, you getting the building. What advice would you have for other church planters that are in that stage of building that initial launch team?
Yeah, I would say make yourself known in as many ways as possible. Every conversation that you have with somebody, ask, "Hey, who else do you know that I can talk to?" It is a season of meeting as many people as possible. And Church Candy, just to say for your company and what you're doing, made that possible for us through our social media ads, through the coffee ads that we did. It allowed us to meet so many people. And I know that it's easy to say, like, "Oh, it's just ads, it's marketing." But there are people behind the screens, and the ads open up a doorway for you to have conversations with those people and for those people to begin a journey with God. And so meet as many people as possible, because you never know who's going to show up even after you launch, 6 months after you launch. Some of those conversations that you had early on could be something that God uses for the future.
Man, I love that. I love that. So, you guys are ramping up for launch. Because you guys launched in January, did you guys face like a lot of people will lose momentum that launch in the new year because you have Thanksgiving and Christmas and people traveling that time of year, especially being like right outside of Milwaukee. I'm sure like blizzard country and stuff. We don't see a lot of that here in Houston. What was that like for you guys?
Yeah, well, throughout our process, we did 4 startup parties each month: September, October, November, December, leading up to our launch day. And on our launch day, we had 710 people in attendance. And so it was phenomenal. We would have never expected it. Actually, the room that our house of worship is, it seats just under 200 people. So for our launch day, we had publicized 9 a.m. and 10:45 a.m. And then we saw all of these RSVPs coming through on church funnels through our Church Candy ads. And I was like, I think we need to add another service. But we had sent out a mailer, and we had already like posted kind of, "Hey, this is what we're doing."
Yeah, you can update service times on a Facebook ad. You can't update service times on a mailer that's already gone out.
Exactly. So we added a 7:30 a.m. service for the launch team and for friends that were coming into town. And at 7:30 a.m., we had a packed house and overflow. And so I was like, this is going to be a crazy day. And sure enough, we had people in the lobby. And, each service, even though we only seat about 200, probably had 250 people in them. And it was just a crazy day. But from there, we did experience, what everyone says is you have your launch day, and then you're usually about 50% of that. And that's kind of where we settled. But then you have Easter right after that. And if you really lean into inviting people to Easter, then that was like a good uptick for us. And I would say we didn't experience a dip until like summertime.
Yeah.
Summer in Wisconsin, everyone's out enjoying the lake. And I'll actually confess something on the Church Candy podcast here.
Gosh.
So we had such success with our launch day and with Easter that we were getting ready to like figure out our budget and all of that, that I was like, do we need like a service like Church Candy anymore? Like we already have people. Like what if we just paused on Church Candy for the summer and just see what happens? And those were our lowest months. And so, literally, I want to say it was like end of August. I called Church Candy back and I was like, "Hey, we need to start service again because I could see a difference in new guests that were coming and just the exposure in the community. I noticed a difference in 2 or 3 months.
That's huge, man.
Yeah.
That's huge.
So confession,
Yeah.
I'm back.
No,
Yeah.
it's all good. It's funny, because we'll have people say, "Yeah, during the summer we're gonna pause." And I'm like, that's typically when you're gonna see a slump. So like, and you see people moving during the summer. So really, you want to lean in more. Like we've seen some pastors have tremendous growth over the summer that like put their foot on the gas. But regardless, God's still doing great things. God's still moving at your church, and it's huge to see. And I love seeing that. You had some really cool numbers and stats that you sent me before the podcast. I love it if you want to take your phone out and read it, unless you got it all memorized.
I've got it. Yeah, I've got it tattooed.
Right, it's next to the Bucks tattoo.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd love to hear just a little bit more about the fruit of what God's been doing in your church, man.
Yeah, we had 710 people at launch, and many of those people, I would say, over the course of the last year, have come back at certain points, and I would say they resonate with like being connected to Story Hill in some capacity. We've seen 43 salvations. We've had 31 baptisms, and like I shared that story earlier of Colleen being baptized. That there have been many of these people who didn't have a church home before. I was able to baptize my brother-in-law and all of my nieces and nephews, and this is their first time, having a church home, and we're there are faces behind that, the numbers. So yeah, we've had 710 people at launch day, 43 salvations, 31 baptisms, and then at Christmas we had 720 people in attendance. And so to be able to get back to that launch day number, not even a year after we started, was incredible and really, really special. And then just this last weekend, we had 457 people. So God's really doing a cool thing and moving. And we're just so grateful for all of the partners, tools, and resources that have made it possible over the last year.
Ned, I love that. I love that. What's the process for you been like? I know when you're in that launch season of building your team and startup parties and connections, you're all focused on January 28th, like launch Sunday.
Yeah.
Well, then it's almost like you have to take that hat off and then put just your lead pastor hat on. And it's like, we got church the next week and the week after that. So what's the process been like transitioning from like church planter to pastor?
Yeah, we launched and we're all standing in the church lobby after our launch day. And we had cupcakes that had sprinkles on them. So there's sprinkles all over the floor. And literally we turned to each other and we're like, who's cleaning this up? Like, we didn't even have a plan for who was cleaning the building that we're in, let alone what next Sunday was going to look like.
Those are things that you don't think about.
Yeah. So that is the weird thing about launch day is it starts again 7 days later. And I would say over, the last year in that, you pre-launch, you're focused on building a launch team and all of the people that are on that launch team. You're investing in them. They're serving in different capacities. But then on launch day, you get this whole new church. And some of the people that weren't with us pre-launch, who were there on launch day and have been there since, are some of the most amazing people. And so you actually get this opportunity to start over. Like, okay, I was focused on the launch team and the 140 people that committed to be a part of that. But now I'm focused on all these 200 plus other people that are calling Story Hill Church their church home. And I'm doing the coffee again. And I'm following up from their card that they filled out on launch day and the weeks following. And just getting to hear their story and kind of playing catch up and doing it all over again.
Yeah. Yeah, man. One of the things that I hear from pastors is like once you get into that new season of, all right, you're you're not just a church planter anymore. You kind of, yes, you're still connecting with people, but now, and like this was something that stressed me out just when I was a youth pastor, just the content writing for like, all right, I preached next Wednesday night. It's get started again. Like it's like as soon as I was done preaching, I'm like, all right, sweet, did it. And then it just starts again the next morning, getting ready for that next message, making sure I'm prepared. So creating 52 weeks of content to preach on a Sunday is a lot.
It is.
Uh,
Yeah.
for you, how are you managing that? And I know this is outside of just church getting and marketing. That's something I would love to hear your what you guys are doing there.
But real quick, before we jump into that, I need you to do me a huge favor. We're on a mission to connect 1 million people to a local church. And so far, we've connected over 200,000 people, and God is doing really, really cool things. But this podcast is a way for us to get connected to more churches, more church planters to help us reach this goal. Can you do me a favor? Like this video, subscribe. If you're listening on audio, go leave a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and then share this video with a pastor or church planter that you know will bring value to their ministry. Okay, with that being said, let's jump back to the podcast.
Yeah. I would say in my previous role, I was a live teaching campus pastor. So I did have some experience of teaching like twice a month or 3 times a month.
Yeah.
But I was always given the topic and the scripture to preach on.
Yeah.
And now it's like, oh, no one's giving me that. Like I have to seek God, come up with it, and figure out like, okay, what are the steps that we need to take as a church together to form our hearts to, match the heart and character of God. So it was a lot of prayer, calendar planning. I found that I try to do like a year-long calendar of like, oh, this is where we're going to be. But I do it now in 4-month chunks just because that works better for my creative process.
Yeah.
And even early on, I was the only staff person, preacher, if you will. But I tried to invite some guests in and have people come through where I could get a break. And so I have a pretty good rhythm of only teaching about every, 5 out of 6 weeks. So every 6th week, I have somebody else come in. For a little while, that was like local pastors and people who supported our launch. But now we've been able to raise some people up in our congregation that can step in and teach. So I need that. I'm proud, I need once every 6 weeks, I need a week off just to, refocus and have that creative content break.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. On a similar note, in that season of becoming a lead pastor of a church, you're also having to really lean in and develop your leaders, like your core team. So for you guys, like who were the first hires that you guys brought on as you guys became an actual church and not just a church plant?
Yeah. I will say massive shout out to Abby, who is my social media communications person. Great social media matters. And she volunteered in that position all pre-launch. So that was somebody who just served and took over the social ads, like in partnership with Church Candy, but then also all the content other than the ads, sharing the story of what was happening. And that's huge because social media opens a door for people to see it and be like, I could go here. I could experience community here. I could belong here. And that matters. And so right away, she was hired. Like we launched and it's like, okay, you're an employee now of Story Hill and works part time. We have a couple worship people that have been on since launch day. We have a kids person that has that position has been on since launch day. And then actually, we had somebody who fundraised 2 years of their salary to do student ministry and young adults. So we had all of the key pieces in place from the very beginning. I have somebody who's like admin and finance. So our staff team is 7 people, including myself, but then plus my wife, who actually doesn't get a paycheck from the church, but she serves countless hours, and we literally couldn't do it without her.
Yeah. 1 year in, is it what you expected?
Far beyond what I expected. And I think I haven't done anything in my life that's been as rewarding as church planning and seeing this. Like I said earlier, there's this church that exists only in your imagination. And then you see it come to life, and it's just far more beautiful than you ever could think that it would be. And sure, are there challenges? Are there some days where it's like, oh, wow, this is really hard and taxing? Absolutely. But overall, it has been the most life giving, year and a half journey of my family's life for sure.
Yeah. Love that, man. I love that. I've got such a heart for church planters and seeing new ministries start from the ground up. And I love that we get to partner with churches like yours. For any church planters out there that are listening, or maybe people that are in that youth pastor, young adults pastor, campus pastor role, that they might feel like God's might be pulling them in the direction of planting a church, what advice would you have for them?
I would say ask a lot of questions, grab coffee with somebody who's done it, and just learn. There are so many conversations that I had from other church planners in the process of like kind of discerning, do we want to step into this? What could this look like? And I grabbed any coffee that I could with a church planner that had launched in the last few years. I do think there obviously have been churches that have launched and been planted who are now 5, 10, 20 years old. I do think there's something special about talking to somebody who's fresh in it and still in the grind of church planning, that if you're trying to discern that, then grab coffee with those people and then find good partners. We've had several partners that have come alongside us who helped assess us as can they do this?
Yeah.
Can they plant a church? And their affirmation and their partnership along the way is huge. And then lastly, I would just say, have a good plan. Follow a playbook. You, you're not gonna invent a playbook that's better than what currently exists. And so, find a plan, stick to it. If you're doing a large launch model, then do the startup parties. Find a good partner for social media ads. And I would say for us, Church Candy is awesome, free plug in that. But yeah, I mean, follow the plan, stick to it, and then just ask God to multiply it.
Yeah. So what kind of church planting organizations did you guys partner with?
Right out of the gate, we partnered with ARC, Association of Related Churches, and they did our ARC assessment. That's the playbook that we followed, and they really encouraged, hey, find a good social media partner to help with ads. And that's when kind of we came across Church Candy, and you probably found me somehow in the algorithm of social media world, but the ads kept coming, and eventually we were like, hey, this looks good, let's do it. But we partnered with ARC, and then we also partnered with Stadia, and Stadia helped coach me as well, in addition to my ARC coach. And the reason why we did that is back in 2017, I went through the Stadia church planning boot camp. And so even though Stadia wasn't maybe like the biggest bumper sticker on the car, I really wanted them to be involved because that's when we found our calling to plant was through their boot camp. And so between ARC and Stadia, those were our two primary partners. And we also were partnered with Multiplied GLR, which is the Great Lakes region of churches in Illinois, Wisconsin, and Michigan. So we're connected with about 250 other churches in the GLR that are on mission to help start more churches in those 3 states.
It's huge, man. It's huge. Well, guys, be sure to connect with him. What's the best way that people can get connected if they want to pick your brain on church planting or anything like that?
Yeah, I would say follow us on social media. We're Story Hill C on Facebook and Instagram, C for Church. And also, if you did call the church, and this is just one thing that I'm sure there are a lot of other church planners that are like this out there, the number to Story Hill Church is my cell phone number. So on Google, you could text that number and it'll go straight to my phone.
There we go. Blue bubble text. You heard it here first. Josh, man, thank you so much for taking the time, coming down to Texas, chatting with me, sharing your heart and what God's been doing at Story Hill.
Thanks. It was great to be here.